Hello Friendos! In today's video, I'm going to be ranking all of my PMG Labs palettes and giving you a little insight into why they are being placed accordingly. So if that sounds like fun, please just keep on watching. I feel like some of the allure of getting a Pat McGrath Labs Mothership palette is the packaging. I saved all my packaging and I have no idea what I've done with some of them. Like, they're here, but I don't know where. And that's my own fault because I am not an organized person. And I have in front of me all 8 of the original Mothership palettes except for the original Divine Rose. At the time, I was not doing YouTube and the color story just didn't excite me enough to go out and buy it. So I didn't get that one. The rest are all here. So let's get the party started. I know I'm about to hurt someone's feelings with this one. So something to consider. Opinions are like butts. Everyone has one. And this is just something petty. It's just makeup. It's not that serious. So without any further ado, at number 8, Grunge Galore, the Celestial Divinity palette. I hate this palette. When I first saw it advertised, I was really excited because I knew that all the shades included were the ones from the Star Wars palettes that came out around Christmas time, I believe in 2019. I tried so hard to get my hands on those palettes. I am a huge Star Wars fan. I'm a huge PMG Labs fan. So this was going to be the perfect collaboration and something that I was so excited for. But let me tell you, I could not get it no matter how hard I tried. So finding out that all those shades were going to be included in the Celestial Divinity palette got me so excited. Not only did that get me excited, but also the price tag. I think this one was around $75, where most of her palettes I think are around $125. So yeah, I was pumped for this. And then it arrived, and then I tried it out. Behold the ugly. The color story in this palette is a grungy mess of a color story. And the quality is not nearly as good as the quality in the rest of the Pat McGrath palettes. And I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with me. I saw so many positive reviews on this palette, but my experience was not positive, so I'm just being honest with you guys. These shades may be glittery, but the fallout of them is real, and none of them have that classic molten metal, wonderful Pat McGrath signature eyeshadow formulation. Honest to goodness, I would not recommend this dumb piece of crap to anyone. It is just the absolute worst. It's not worth $75. There are so many other palettes out there that you could spend your money on. Honestly, if you are mulling over whether or not to get this one, and it was because you hadn't tried out Pat McGrath before and you wanted to be more fiscally responsible, I would recommend waiting for a sale and getting her $125 palettes on sale, which it happens quite a bit, or getting one of her quads for cheaper. That way you can still get the usual quality, which is fantastic, and not what she gave us with this, because this is not good. Now that that dark cloud has passed, we can get on to the rest of the ranking video. Every palette that I mentioned from this point on is a treasure in my makeup collection. It was really hard for me to not just give up and call them all winners, but you know, it is a ranking video. So number 7 goes to the Mothership. Number 4, the Decadence palette. These shades are all metallic, and in my opinion, that adds up to it not being a complete palette. I've said it before in my other videos, I feel like if a palette doesn't include mattes, shimmers, sparkles, like a variety, or at least 2 different formulas. It's not a complete palette. So if you don't mind using a palette in conjunction with another palette, this is still a really good one to have in your collection because you are able to capitalize on those really pretty molten, shimmery, metallic shades that everyone goes gaga for. The packaging of this palette is also one of the reasons why it's lower in my ranking videos. The packaging is just not as luxe as some of the other palettes. I don't have that one right in front of me, but I just want to show you what I'm talking about here. This is a normal pat package. It has string that goes around, and you can kind of use that string. Sorry, it's hard to do it without looking at it head on. You can use the string to wrap around these 2 little, I guess you could say, clasps, but you use the string to wrap that around. With this palette, there is no string, and even weirder, the string is photoshopped on. So you see a picture of an opening, but that's not even the real opening to the palette. Plus, and I don't know if you've ever ordered from Pat McGrath lamps before, but it is common for them to send you busted up, raggedy looking packaging. And that's exactly what they did to me on this package. I think this one was the worst of all the Pat packaging that I ever got sent. I may have thrown this one away. I don't think I did. I just can't find it, but it was awful. I really expected better from them. My opinion on this palette is slightly soured because of that experience. But yeah, it's still a phenomenal palette. It's still something that I think everyone would enjoy. But that's why it's at number 7. At number 6, the Subversive palette. This was the 3rd palette, I believe, that Mother released, and it's a good palette. It really is. The one downside to this palette is the packaging. It's not as nice as the others. Let me show you. So there it is. Is it pretty? Yes. Is it the bee in the mouth, gorgeous, animated girl? No. This looks like a photograph of some sort. It's okay. I mean, it's nice. It's just not my favorite. So in this palette, we have this shade in the corner here, which it looks pretty, but it is just a topper. It's not opaque like some of the other shades in the palette. I think that was also one of the reasons why it's lower in the list. It's also a cool tone palette. I prefer warm or a mix of the two. If I am dipping into this palette, it's for one of these 3 wonderful shades. So this one right here has a really pretty pink to coral reflect. This one right here is a gorgeous antique gold. Like, I love a gold with a black base to it, where it just looks ancient and pretty. And then we also have a purpley blue. And this one is like, it's not just blue, it's like that beautiful cerulean blue. And I don't have that in any other palette, so for me, this palette is a treasure, but it has to go somewhere, and it's landing at number 6. I had to be very nitpicky in placing this one in the 5th spot, but here we are. Number 5, the Mothership Sublime palette. If I was going to find one thing to change about this palette, it would be, again, there's a topper shade that's not a real, what I would consider to be a real eyeshadow shade. However, there's a lot to love about this palette. I especially love this copper color right here, and it's that gorgeous molten liquid metal, wonderful formulation that you can only get in a Pat McGrath palette. Also, I like the peachy gold duochrome, gorgeous. One thing I would like to note about this palette is the green that you see here. It looks pretty bold in the pan, but when you place it on the eye, it's bold, but it has a black base. It doesn't retain that true green vibe that I would really like for it too, because I love green eyeshadows. So that's my one criticism with this palette, and the packaging on this palette is lit. All right, moving on. Number 4, it's the Midnight Sun. I'm a huge fan of the packaging on this palette. I was really saddened when my packaging arrived all busted up and decrepit looking. Like, honestly, if you can, I definitely recommend this to everyone. If you can wait to order from Sephora instead of ordering from Pat McGrath Labs, the website itself, your packaging likely will arrive in better condition. What's weird to me is Pat McGrath usually comes with a lot of stuffing in the package, so it's packaged well. I honestly think that this package is like broken down before it ever leaves the warehouse where it's stored. I don't know. I wish that I got more respect as a customer from Pat McGrath Labs, but I think really the way to go is get it from Sephora, because my packaging has never looked like crap. I ordered from Selfridges one time, so it literally came from across the world, and it did not look like what I get whenever I order from Pat McGrath Labs online. All right, enough negativity. This palette is still fantastic. Look at this warm tone color story. I think this is probably top 2 of the warmest of the Pat McGrath Labs Mothership palettes, and I reach for this one quite a bit. I also feel like this palette has one of the best color stories, and it's obvious that a lot of thought went into the palette and its color story, because each of these blend out really well together, and I feel like I can make a plethora of looks. They all look different, but they all look cohesive and beautiful. This palette is an absolute gem in my collection. All right, not much to go. We are coming into 3rd place with the Bronze Seduction palette. Now, I like this one for a very selfish reason. I think the reason why it's so high on the list for me is because it amplifies my blue eyes. It's actually what I'm wearing right now. But yeah, I feel like the color story of this one really amplifies how blue my eyes are and just enhances how blue they are. I think that it would do the same thing if you had like green or gray eyes. Yeah, this is the one. The other thing that really gets me with this palette is this duochrome right here. It's red and it's green. It may not show up right on camera, but it's fantastic. You put it on your eyes and it's like stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. Like it's like nothing. It's like nothing else. My one criticism for this palette is the dark plum shade that you see in the corner right here. It's just not the best formulation. It is kind of patchy to work with and dry. It's different from the other mattes that I've gotten in her palettes. Like Pat McGrath mattes, they're dry, but they're easy to blend out and they pack a lot of pigmentation. This right here wasn't easy to blend out, and it doesn't really even look that plum on the eye. I don't know. It's just kind of a strange color, and I wish they would have did something different with it. All right, the competition is getting spicy. So, for 2nd place, what do you think it is? Leave it in the comments down below if you think you know what number 2 would be for me. It's the Divine Rose 2. I admire most of Mother's packaging on her palettes, but this one actually enchants me. Every time I open up this palette, I just stare at some of the shades and just imagine the possibilities, because really there are a ton of possibilities with this palette. I was wanting and waiting and watching for a peachy matte shade to be released in a Pat McGrath Labs palette. And Mother finally brought it in this palette. Thank the Lord. This was actually a gift from my sister and I absolutely treasure it. It has this wonderful pink and green duochrome in it. It doesn't show up as good on camera as how it looks in real life, but in real life, phenomenal. For me, this is the quintessential spring, summer, weirdo creative person palette. It's perfect for me. The first cut is the deepest. This is what created the monster that feeds off these expensive as crap Mothership palettes. It's the first palette I ever purchased from Pat McGrath. It's the original Subliminal palette. Never would I have imagined that I would be placing a cool-toned palette at the #1 spot of a rankings video, but alas, here we are. She's gorgeous. Like, I adore the gold shade in this palette. Like, check this out, you guys. It is the softest gold ever, and it's that molten, pretty formula. I have a swatch on there from earlier. I'm not sure what that is, but it's this one. It is just, it's unlike anything else, and you can apply it to practically any makeup look, and it just makes it look so classy. The other things that I really like about the palette is the pink and blue duochrome shade. I get so many compliments when I have this on. Actually, for the whole palette, I think out of all my palettes, this is the one where when I do my makeup, I get the most compliments. It has that bold blue. You remember when KKW released that palette and it had the bold blue and everyone went nuts for it? This formulation is 500 times better. It's a million times better. It's in a league all its own. It's a wonderful, wonderful palette. So the artwork for this palette is not nearly as glamorous as most of her other palettes. I actually think that the packaging overall for this one is probably my least favorite, but this palette breaks all the rules. It's a cool tone palette, doesn't have the cool artwork that the other palettes do. At first glance, it's not even a Laurel palette, if you will, but this one has my heart and it has the #1 spot on my Pat McGrath's ranking video. So please tell me what you think. Do you have a favorite Pat McGrath Labs palette? If so, please tell me. I always like to hear people's opinions on these expensive palettes. If you enjoyed watching me get way too emotionally involved with pretty but petty makeup palettes, then you might want to consider subscribing to my channel because I do this kind of thing more often than I should. And if not, you'll just have to live in the shadows of never knowing what could have been. Okay, bye guys!